Silicon Valley investor vanished mid-speech. Days later, his glasses appeared on a frozen riverbank. In the heart of Silicon Valley, where the sun-drenched hills of Palo Alto meet the endless hum of innovation, Ethan Caldwell lived a life that seemed scripted for success. At 48, he was the kind of man who turned heads in boardrooms and coffee shops alike, tall, with a sharp jawline softened by a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, and eyes that sparkled with the quiet confidence of someone who'd bet big and won bigger. His home was a sleek modernist house perched on a ridge overlooking the Stanford campus, all glass walls and open spaces that let the California light flood in. Mornings there started early, with the scent of fresh coffee brewing and the distant whoosh of traffic on Highway 101 below. Ethan would stand on his deck, mug in hand, scrolling through emails on his phone while the fog lifted from the bay, revealing the patchwork of tech campuses that defined his world. Ethan had built his fortune not by inventing the next big app, but by spotting the diamonds in the rough, startups teetering on the edge of breakthrough or bust. As a partner at VentureForge Capital, he managed a portfolio worth hundreds of millions, funding everything from AI-driven health diagnostics to sustainable energy grids. His office in downtown Mountain View was a testament to that life. Minimalist desks cluttered with prototype gadgets, walls lined with framed patents from his successes, and a view of the Googleplex's colorful bike racks just across the street. Colleagues admired him for his gut instincts. He'd once passed on a flashy social media darling, only to pour millions into a quiet biotech firm that cured a rare form of pediatric leukemia. "It's not about the flash," he'd say in meetings, his voice steady and warm, laced with that Midwestern twang he never quite shook from his Ohio roots. "It's about the impact that lasts." But beneath the polished exterior, Ethan's life was anchored by family, the one constant in a world of fleeting trends. His wife, Laura, was a software engineer at a nearby firm, her days filled with coding marathons and late-night debugging sessions. They met in college at Stanford, back when Ethan was still a wide-eyed economics major, and Laura was the brilliant comp-sci whiz who tutored him through stats. Now, after 22 years of marriage, their bond was the quiet kind. Shared glances over dinner, inside jokes about buggy algorithms. Their daughter, Mia, 16, was the spark in their home, a high school junior with her father's curiosity and her mother's sharp wit. She dreamed of following in their footsteps, already interning at a local startup during summers. Her room a chaos of laptops, sketchbooks, and posters of female tech pioneers. Evenings at the Caldwell house often revolved around the kitchen island, where the three of them would chop vegetables for stir-fry while debating the ethics of facial recognition tech. "Dad, what if your investments are tracking us all?" Mia would tease, her laughter echoing off the high ceilings as Ethan ruffled her hair. "Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown." Stories like Ethan's remind us how fragile life can be. If you're as captivated as I am, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the twists ahead. Life in Silicon Valley moved at a relentless pace, and Ethan thrived in it, but he made time for the small rituals that grounded him. Weekends meant hikes along the Los Trancos Trail, where the eucalyptus trees whispered in the breeze, and the air carried the faint tang of ocean salt from afar. He'd pack a backpack with water bottles and energy bars, leading Laura and Mia up the dusty paths, pointing out wildflowers or the occasional deer grazing in the underbrush. "This is why we do it," he'd say, pausing at a viewpoint to catch his breath, the sprawl of the valley unfolding below like a circuit board come to life. Those moments were his reset, a break from the pitch meetings and investor calls that dominated his weekdays. Laura often joked that he was married to his work, but she knew better. Ethan's drive came from a deeper place, a fear of stagnation born from watching his own father, a factory worker, grind through decades without reward. Socially, Ethan was the connector, the one who hosted barbecues on their deck where entrepreneurs swapped ideas over grilled salmon and craft IPAs. The gatherings buzzed with energy, laughter mingling with the sizzle of the grill, the clink of glasses toasting the next unicorn. Neighbors, a mix of tech execs and academics, admired his easy charisma. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills painting the sky in oranges and pinks, Ethan stood with a group of friends discussing a new quantum computing venture. "It's risky," he admitted, swirling his drink. "But imagine the doors it opens. Cures we haven't dreamed of yet." His enthusiasm was infectious, drawing nods and eager questions. Laura watched from across the yard, smiling as Mia showed off a coding project on her tablet to a rapt audience. It was scenes like these that made their life feel invincible, a carefully curated blend of ambition and warmth. Yet, even in this idyllic bubble, cracks of stress occasionally showed. Ethan had been working longer hours lately, chasing a high-stakes deal with a climate tech startup based in San Francisco. The pressure weighed on him, late nights poring over financials in his home office, the glow of his screen reflecting in his glasses as he rubbed his temples. "It's just this one," he'd assure Laura during their quiet moments in bed, the house settling around them with the soft creaks of cooling glass. She'd trace his hand with her fingers, whispering, "You've got this. We all do." Mia sensed it too, slipping notes under his door with doodles of superheroes battling spreadsheets. Ethan cherished those gestures, reminders that his world extended beyond valuations and venture rounds. As autumn edged into the cooler months, the valley's perpetual summer gave way to crisp mornings and the first hints of rain pattering on rooftops. Ethan prepared for a major conference in San Jose, a glittering event where investors like him unveiled the future to a sea of eager faces. He'd rehearsed his speech a dozen times, pacing the living room with note cards, his voice rising and falling with practiced rhythm. This isn't just investment, he'd practice. It's legacy. The family rallied around him, Mia helping with slides, Laura proofreading the script. On the morning of the event, the house thrummed with anticipation, the aroma of pancakes filling the air, sunlight streaming through the windows onto the wooden floors. Ethan adjusted his tie in the mirror, his glasses perched on his nose, a faint smile playing on his lips. Little did they know, that day would shatter everything they held dear. The drive to the San Jose Convention Center that crisp November morning felt like any other for Ethan. Traffic on 280 hummed along smoothly, the golden hills dotted with turning leaves under a sky streaked with high clouds. He gripped the wheel of his Tesla, the dashboard screen displaying his speech notes as he mentally rehearsed one last time. The conference was a big deal, the annual Tech Frontier Summit, drawing over 500 attendees from startups to venture giants. Ethan was slotted for a midday keynote in the main hall, a 20-minute slot to pitch his vision for sustainable AI investments. His phone buzzed with a text from Laura. "Knock 'em dead. Love you." He smiled, firing back a quick heart emoji before merging onto the 101. The convention center loomed ahead, a sprawling complex of glass and steel that always reminded Ethan of a futuristic hive. Outside, banners fluttered in the breeze, advertising sessions on blockchain ethics and neural networks. Valets in crisp uniforms directed cars into the lot, where the air buzzed with conversations. Eager founders in hoodies clutching pitch decks, suited investors sipping coffee from branded mugs. Ethan parked, smoothed his navy blazer, and strode toward the entrance, his polished loafers clicking on the pavement. The lobby was a whirlwind, registration booths handing out badges, screens flashing agendas, the faint aroma of espresso from a pop-up cart mingling with the sterile scent of air-conditioned halls. He checked in quickly, nodding to familiar faces. "Ethan, ready to inspire?" called out Sarah Klein, a fellow VC from across the bay, her enthusiasm cutting through the din. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and always wired on black coffee. Ethan chuckled, adjusting his glasses. "As ready as I'll ever be. You catching the panel after?" They chatted briefly about a mutual portfolio company, the words flowing easily amid the crowd's shuffle. Sarah waved him off toward the green room where speakers prepped. "Break a leg," she said, her voice warm but distracted by her own notes. Inside the green room, the atmosphere was calmer, a hushed contrast to the lobby's energy. Low couches lined the walls, a table laden with water bottles, fruit platters, and name tags. Ethan settled into a chair, reviewing his slides on a tablet. A few other speakers milled about, A young CEO practicing her demo, an older economist sipping tea. The room's windows overlooked the parking lot, where palm trees swayed gently against the distant Santa Cruz mountains. Ethan felt the familiar pre-talk jitters, a knot in his stomach, the dry mouth, but it was the good kind, the fuel that sharpened his focus. He glanced at his watch. 11:45. His slot started at noon. The stage manager, a harried woman named Dana with a headset and clipboard, poked her head in. "Mr. Caldwell, we're bumping you up 5 minutes early. Tech glitch in the previous session. You good?" Ethan nodded, pocketing his phone. "Lead the way." He followed her down a corridor lined with posters of past summits, the muffled roar of the audience growing louder. Backstage, the air was thicker, laced with the hum of projectors and the faint ozone smell of spotlights. Crew members adjusted mics and cables, their voices clipped. "Sound check on the lav. Clear." Ethan stepped onto the wing of the stage, peering out at the sea of faces. The main hall was packed. Rows of folding chairs filled with attentive listeners, the massive screen behind the podium glowing with the conference logo. Natural light filtered through high windows, casting a warm glow over the proceedings. The moderator wrapped up the intro, her voice amplified. "And now, please welcome Ethan Caldwell of VentureForge Capital, here to discuss investing in tomorrow's ethics." Applause rippled through the room as Ethan walked out, the stage lights hitting him like a soft wave. He shook the moderator's hand, a quick, firm grip, and took the podium. The wood cool under his palms. His glasses caught the light as he smiled, scanning the crowd. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice steady, carrying that Midwestern warmth. "In a world where tech moves faster than we can regulate it, investment isn't just about returns, it's about responsibility." The first few minutes flowed seamlessly. Ethan gestured to his slides, talking about bias in algorithms, the need for diverse founding teams. The audience leaned in, nods and murmurs of agreement punctuating his points. He paused for emphasis, sipping from a water glass. "Take climate tech, for instance," he continued, clicking to a graph showing emission reductions. "We've funded projects that could cut global carbon by 20% in a decade, but without ethical guardrails." His voice trailed off mid-sentence, the words hanging in the air. The slide froze on screen, but that wasn't what stopped everyone. Ethan had gone still, his hand midway to adjusting his glasses, eyes widening slightly as if he'd spotted something in the crowd. The moderator shifted uncomfortably from her seat. "Ethan?" she prompted softly into the mic. No response. The audience murmured, a ripple of confusion spreading. On stage, Ethan blinked once, then twice, his posture stiffening. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. Then, abruptly, he stepped back from the podium, his tablet slipping from his hand to clatter on the floor. Security near the wings tensed. But before anyone could react, Ethan turned and walked off stage, not in panic but with a deliberate stride, like he was heading to a side meeting. Dana, the stage manager, caught his arm backstage. "Mr. Caldwell, are you okay? We need you to—" He pulled away gently, mumbling something incoherent about the river that no one quite caught, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. Within seconds, the hall erupted in whispers. The moderator ad-libbed, "Folks, give us a moment. Technical difficulties." But Ethan was already moving through the corridor, past startled crew members, toward the emergency exit. Alarms didn't sound. He pushed the bar and stepped out into the loading dock area, where delivery trucks idled and the chill air carried the scent of diesel. A staffer followed, calling after him, "Sir, your speech." Ethan didn't turn, his steps quickening as he crossed the lot, weaving between cars. By the time security radioed ahead, he'd vanished into the throng of attendees spilling out for lunch, or perhaps slipped away entirely. No one saw him get into a car. His Tesla still sat untouched in the valet section. Back inside, chaos simmered. Sarah Klein, who'd been in the audience, rushed backstage, her face etched with worry. "What happened? He just walked off?" Dana shook her head, checking her phone. "I don't know. He seemed fine 1 second then." The moderator announced a break. But the buzz spread like wildfire through the conference, texts flying, LinkedIn notifications pinging. Ethan's colleagues tried calling. His phone went straight to voicemail. Laura, at her office in Sunnyvale, got the first alert from a mutual friend. Something weird at the summit? Ethan bailed mid-speech. Her heart sank as she dialed him, pacing her cubicle, the open-plan office's chatter fading around her. Hours ticked by with no sign. Police were called by late afternoon, a routine missing persons report filed at the San Jose station. The center's cameras captured him leaving the dock, heading toward a side street lined with food trucks and palm trees. But then, nothing. No credit card hits, no sightings on traffic cams. Mia, pulled from school early, waited at home with Laura. The house suddenly too quiet, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows like an accusation. "Mom, where is he?" she asked, voice small, clutching her phone as if it might ring with answers. Laura forced a calm she didn't feel, hugging her tight. "He's probably just overwhelmed. He'll call soon." But deep down, a chill settled in, the kind that whispered this was no simple mix-up. As evening fell, the valley's lights twinkled on, oblivious to the fracture in one family's world. Search teams fanned out, friends canvassing nearby streets, cops reviewing footage. But Ethan Caldwell had slipped away like a glitch in the system he knew so well. The speech notes lay forgotten on the stage, his glasses nowhere in sight, leaving only questions in the gathering dusk. The first hours after Ethan's disappearance blurred into a frantic haze for Laura and Mia. Back at their Palo Alto home, the sleek kitchen that had once hosted lively debates now felt cavernous and cold, the quartz counters reflecting the harsh glow of overhead lights. Laura paced the living room, phone pressed to her ear, her free hand twisting the hem of her sweater, a soft gray one Ethan had bought her on a trip to Big Sur. The San Jose police dispatcher on the line repeated the same assurances. "Ma'am, we've logged the report. Patrols are checking the area around the convention center. We'll need you to come in for a formal statement tomorrow." Mia sat curled on the couch, knees drawn up, scrolling through her phone for any social media buzz from the conference. Her eyes, red-rimmed from silent tears, flicked up every time the front door creaked in the wind. "He wouldn't just leave like that, Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Dad's not. He's not the type to ghost everyone." By midnight, the initial wave of friends and colleagues descended on the house, turning the open-plan space into an impromptu command center. Sarah Klein arrived first, her usually impeccable bob disheveled, carrying takeout coffee from a 24-hour drive-thru. "I saw the whole thing," she said, handing Laura a steaming cup, the bitter aroma cutting through the stale air. He looked off, like he'd seen a ghost. But Ethan? Vanish? It doesn't compute. More arrived in waves. Ethan's partner at Venture Forge, a burly guy named Raj Patel with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, barking orders into his phone as he paced the deck. "I've got our team pulling security footage from every angle. Google, Apple, the works. Someone must have seen him." Neighbors from the ridge, tech families in yoga pants and hoodies, brought casseroles and laptops, setting up on the dining table to map out search grids on Google Earth. The valley's night sky, dotted with stars unobscured by city lights, seemed mockingly peaceful outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. The police response ramped up at dawn as a light fog rolled in from the bay, muting the morning sun and blanketing the streets in a damp chill. Detective Maria Ruiz, a no-nonsense veteran in her 50s with a San Jose PD badge pinned to her khaki jacket, arrived at the house around 7 a.m. Her cruiser idled in the driveway, its lights off, but the radio crackling faintly. Inside, she sat with Laura and Mia at the kitchen island, notepad in hand, the scent of cooling coffee lingering. "Walk me through his routine," Ruiz said, her voice steady but empathetic, eyes scanning the room's tech gadgets as if they held clues. Laura recounted the morning, the pancakes, the tie adjustment, the loving text. Mia chimed in about the speech prep, her words tumbling out. "He was excited, Detective, joking about how he'd revolutionize ethics or whatever. He wouldn't bail without telling us." Ruiz nodded, jotting notes, then asked about stressors. "The big deal?" Any enemies in the cutthroat VC world? Everyone loves Ethan, Raj interjected from the doorway, his arms crossed. He's the guy who says yes when others say no. The search kicked off methodically. Patrol cars swept the convention center's perimeter, where food truck wrappers skittered across the asphalt in the breeze, and the palm trees rustled overhead. Officers interviewed attendees milling about for the day's sessions, founders in conference swag, their badges dangling like afterthoughts. "Did you see a man in a navy blazer, mid-40s, glasses?" they'd ask, showing Ethan's photo from his LinkedIn profile. That confident smile against a backdrop of the Venture Forge logo. Most shook their heads, distracted by keynotes on quantum encryption. One barista at the espresso cart vaguely recalled a guy looking kinda lost heading toward the side street, but no details stuck. Security footage from the loading dock showed Ethan emerging into the daylight, squinting against the sun, his steps purposeful but unhurried. He turned left onto Almaden Boulevard, a busy artery lined with strip malls and office parks, the traffic humming with commuters in Priuses and Ubers. Then, at the corner, he vanished from frame, swallowed by the pedestrian flow or perhaps ducking into a crowd. Volunteers fanned out on foot, the fog lifting to reveal the crisp November air, carrying hints of eucalyptus from nearby parks. Raj coordinated a group along the Guadalupe River Trail, a winding path of packed dirt and chain-link fences that snaked through industrial zones toward downtown San Jose. They called his name into the underbrush, where graffiti-tagged benches overlooked the sluggish water, but only distant traffic answered. "Ethan, it's Raj. Pick up." His phone, tracked via Find My iPhone, pinged briefly at 12:47 p.m. near the convention center, then went dark, battery dead or turned off. No hits on his credit cards, no withdrawals from ATMs. Laura joined a smaller team driving the neighborhood, her SUV crawling past taquerias with colorful murals and tech shuttles disgorging workers. She stopped at every crosswalk, heart pounding, scanning faces in the morning rush. "Have you seen this man?" she'd ask shop owners, her voice hoarse, handing out flyers with Ethan's photo. A bodega clerk shook his head, the bell above the door jingling as customers pushed in for lotto tickets. "Sorry, lady, lots of suits around here." Media caught wind by noon, turning the story into Silicon Valley's latest glitch. Local news vans parked outside the convention center, reporters in puffer jackets interviewing stunned organizers under the fluttering banners. A prominent investor walks off mid-keynote, foul play or burnout. One headline blared on KPIX, the anchor's voice grave over footage of the empty stage. Ethan's face flashed on screens across the valley, from living rooms in Atherton mansions to break rooms in startup garages. Tips flooded in, sightings at a Menlo Park coffee shop, a doppelganger on the Caltrain, but each led nowhere. One caller swore they saw him at a dive bar off Bascom Avenue, nursing a beer amid the clink of pool balls and neon signs buzzing in the dim light. Cops checked it out. Just a lookalike, a sales rep from a faltering SaaS firm who laughed nervously when questioned. "Me? Nah, I'm just hiding from my ex-boss." As the day wore on, exhaustion set in, the initial surge of adrenaline giving way to a gnawing dread. Back at the house, the command center thinned, friends hugging Laura goodbye with promises to keep looking, their eyes hollow. Mia retreated to her room, the posters of Ada Lovelace staring down as she texted classmates for any rumors. Detective Ruiz returned in the late afternoon, her face lined with fatigue, the fog outside thickening into a drizzle that pattered against the glass. "We've covered the basics," she told Laura over tea in the dimming light, the steam rising like unanswered questions. "No signs of struggle, no ransom demands. Could be voluntary, a mental health episode maybe. VCs burn out hard in this world." Laura's hands trembled on her mug. "That's not Ethan. He'd never leave us wondering like this." Ruiz sighed, flipping her notepad shut. "We'll expand the grid tomorrow. Drones over the river, bolos to neighboring counties. But without more, it's a waiting game." Night fell again, the valley's highways glowing with brake lights as rush hour peaked. Search teams stood down, the river trail empty save for joggers in reflective gear. Ethan's Tesla remained in the valet lot, keys in the ignition, a silent sentinel under sodium lamps. No trace of his glasses, no final words beyond that mumbled, "the river." The family huddled on the couch, the TV muted on a news loop, the weight of failure pressing in. Whispers of darker possibilities crept into conversations, rival investors, a botched deal gone south, but evidence was scant, just shadows in the data stream. For now, the search had hit a wall, leaving Laura staring into the dark, wondering if the man who'd built empires could simply unravel into nothing. The drizzle turned to steady rain, drumming on the roof like impatient fingers, as hope flickered but held, fragile as the fog over the bay. Weeks turned into a monotonous grind for the Caldwell family, the initial frenzy of the search giving way to a quieter, more insidious ache that settled into the bones of their daily routine. The Palo Alto house, once alive with the clatter of keyboards and the sizzle of weeknight dinners, now echoed with unspoken silences. Laura returned to work at her software firm in Sunnyvale, but the open plan office felt like a foreign land. Colleagues offering sympathetic nods over Slack messages, their "How are you holding up?" pings landing like polite intrusions. She coded through the haze, her screen blurring as she debugged loops that mirrored the endless cycle in her mind. Where is he? The commute on Highway 101, usually a podcast-filled escape with views of the rolling hills, now dragged with every red light, her eyes scanning the medians for a familiar silhouette. Mia's world shrank to the confines of her high school and the sanctuary of her room. The junior year that had promised college apps and internship dreams twisted into something heavier. She attended classes mechanically, the linoleum hallways buzzing with gossip that had long since moved on from her dad's story to the latest TikTok drama. Friends tiptoed around her at lunch, their cafeteria trays clinking awkwardly as one girl, Emily with the freckles and braces, finally asked, "You okay? We miss seeing you at soccer." Mia forced a smile, poking at her salad. "Yeah, just tired." But nights were worse. She'd lie on her bed, the glow of her laptop casting shadows on the posters of tech icons, scrolling through old family photos. Ethan at her 8th grade science fair, beaming as she held a ribbon for her solar-powered robot. Dad would say, "Keep pushing." She'd whisper to the empty room, but the words felt hollow without his laugh to echo them. The police investigation simmered on low, Detective Ruiz checking in bi-weekly with updates that were more absence than presence. Her calls came during Laura's coffee breaks, the detective's voice crackling over speakerphone in the kitchen, the scent of burnt toast lingering from a distracted morning. "We've got the Bolo extended statewide, and the FBI's cyber unit is digging into his emails. No red flags on threats or affairs," Ruiz would say, her tone matter-of-fact like reciting code. Phone records show nothing after that last ping. Could be he ditched it. Laura gripped the counter, the cool marble grounding her. "What about the river he mentioned? We've checked the Guadalupe a dozen times." Ruiz paused, the faint hum of her office in the background. Keyboards tapping, a radio dispatch. Volunteers still walk it weekly. Cold snaps coming, might freeze parts over. But no sign. People vanish in this state all the time. Hikers, runaways. Ethan's profile doesn't fit the usual, though. Those conversations ended with Laura staring out the window at the ridge, where eucalyptus leaves rustled in the wind, wondering if Ethan was out there, watching the same hills. Media attention. That brief Silicon Valley spotlight faded like a viral tweet losing traction. The KPIX segments gave way to smaller blogs, TechCrunch recaps questioning VC burnout epidemic, with stock photos of stressed execs at desks. Ethan's face lingered on missing person sites, his LinkedIn frozen in time, but the venture world moved on ruthlessly. VentureForge reassigned his portfolio, Raj Patel stepping up with heavy sighs during board calls that Laura eavesdropped on from the home office. Ethan's instincts were gold, he'd say in one zoom, his face pixelated on the screen, the backdrop of his cluttered bookshelf blurring. "We'll honor that, double down on the climate tech." Colleagues sent care packages, artisanal chocolates from C's, gift cards for therapy apps. Sarah Klein visited once a week, bringing takeout from Oren's Hummus in Menlo Park, the warm pita and garlicky dips a small comfort on the deck as the sun dipped low, painting the bay in bruised purples. "He texted me that morning. See you there. Let's talk quantum. She'd recount, her eyes misting over the railing. I keep thinking he'll just show up, like it's a bad dream. Laura nodded. The two women sitting in wicker chairs that creaked softly, the distant hum of Highway 101 a constant underscore. Mia asks about him every night. I don't know what to say anymore. Family rituals adapted, fractured but persistent. Holidays loomed without fanfare. Thanksgiving passed in a subdued gathering with Laura's sister from Sacramento. The turkey carved on the island amid forced small talk about the niece's school plays. Mia set an extra plate at the table, a silent placeholder, her fork scraping china as rain pattered against the glass walls. To absent friends, her aunt toasted awkwardly, the clink of wine glasses sharp in the quiet. Laura's grief manifested in fits. Nights she'd wander the house in Ethan's old Stanford hoodie, its fabric soft and faintly scented with his cologne, tracing the paths he'd paced during speech rehearsals. She'd end up in his office, the desk still dusted with prototype gadgets, flipping through his planner, notes on Mia's birthday gift, a scribbled love L&M in the margin. Why didn't you say goodbye? She'd murmur, the words dissolving into the hum of the fridge. As December crept in, the valley's mild chill sharpened into something rare, a prolonged cold front sweeping down from the Sierra Nevada, frosting lawns and turning breath visible on morning walks. Frost-etched patterns on car windshields, and the Guadalupe River, that sluggish waterway Ethan had mumbled about, slowed under a thin skim of ice along its banks. Volunteers dwindled. The river trail, once alive with search parties calling his name, echoed only with the crunch of solitary joggers' sneakers on gravel. Raj organized a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Harlan who prowled dive bars and hacker meetups in San Francisco's Mission District, the neon signs flickering over his notepad as he nursed a soda. No hits on dark web chatter, Harlan reported one foggy evening at the house, his boots tracking mud on the entry mat. Guy like Ethan, if he wanted to disappear, he could fake ID, offshore account. But that doesn't feel right. Mia overheard from the stairs, her hand on the banister, heart twisting. Dad wouldn't abandon us. She said later to Laura in the dim hallway, the house lights casting long shadows. Something happened. I feel it. The emotional toll deepened cracks in unexpected places. Laura's coding suffered. Bugs slipped through reviews, earning gentle feedback from her boss over a virtual coffee chat, the steam rising from her mug like evaporating resolve. Take more time, he suggested, his face kind on the screen, the office plants behind him drooping slightly. She nodded, but time felt like the enemy now, each day piling on the weight of uncertainty. Mia threw herself into a school project on ethical AI, channeling her anger into essays that quoted Ethan's old speeches. Her teacher praising the raw passion during a parent conference Laura attended alone. The empty chair beside her a stark reminder. Friends' pitying glances at soccer games or mall hangouts wore on her. She skipped parties, preferring the isolation of coding marathons in the garage, the concrete floor cool under her crossed legs, the whir of her fan the only company. Yet, glimmers of resilience flickered. Laura joined a support group in Mountain View, a circle of folding chairs in a community center basement, the air thick with instant coffee and shared stories of loss. My husband vanished on a fishing trip up north, one woman said, her voice steady after months of silence. We keep searching, even when it hurts. Those meetings ended with hugs, the drive home through lit streets offering a fragile sense of not being adrift alone. Mia found solace in online forums for kids of missing parents, anonymous posts venting fears that mirrored her own. What if he's hurt and can't call? The valley's rhythm persisted around them. Tech shuttles rumbling past, barbecues firing up on neighbor decks despite the chill. But the Caldwell's world tilted, suspended in a limbo where hope and despair tangled like fog over the bay. By mid-December, as the first heavy rains swelled the river and the cold lingered, the family clung to routines like lifelines. Laura marked Ethan's birthday on the calendar with a single candle on a cupcake, Mia and she sharing it on the deck under string lights that twinkled against the darkening sky. To you, wherever you are, Laura whispered, the wind carrying the words toward the hills. The search hadn't yielded answers, but neither had it broken them. Not yet. Life pressed on, altered. The mystery of Ethan's disappearance a shadow that lengthened with each passing day, waiting for the moment it might crack open. The bite of mid-December gripped the South Bay like an uninvited guest, turning the usually balmy Silicon Valley into a landscape of unexpected frost. Mornings dawned with a crystalline hush, the kind where car doors creaked louder against the chill and breath hung in the air like fleeting secrets. The Guadalupe River, that meandering vein through San Jose's industrial underbelly, had transformed under the cold front, its waters sluggish and edged with thin sheets of ice that cracked under the weight of drifting leaves. Volunteers had all but vanished from the trails, their footsteps replaced by the solitary crunch of dog walkers' boots on frosted gravel paths. Chain-link fences along the banks rattled faintly in the wind, guarding warehouses with peeling paint and the distant rumble of freight trains echoing from the Dumbarton rail corridor. Laura Caldwell woke that Tuesday with a heaviness that had become routine, the house's smart thermostat humming to life at 6:15 a.m., struggling against the overnight drop to 32 degrees. She slipped into layers, a wool sweater over her jeans, scarf looped around her neck, before rousing Mia for school. Breakfast was oatmeal warmed in the microwave, the steam rising in lazy curls as they sat at the island, the silence broken only by the tick of the wall clock and the faint patter of rain starting up again. "Don't forget your coat," Laura said, her voice softer than intended, watching Mia shrug on her backpack. The girl nodded, eyes distant, before heading out to the bus stop where the neighborhood's electric cars idled in driveways, their headlights cutting through the gray dawn. Laura's day at the office blurred into code reviews and meetings, but her mind wandered to the river more often now. Detective Ruiz's last update had mentioned the freeze might preserve evidence, tossed items, footprints frozen in mud, but it felt like grasping at straws. By noon, during a break in the relentless drizzle that slicked the Sunnyvale parking lot, Laura's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. She stepped outside, the cold nipping at her cheeks as she answered. "Mrs. Caldwell, this is Officer Thomas from San Jose PD. We've got something. You need to come down to the Guadalupe River Trail, near the Alviso section. Bring Mia if you can. It's about Ethan." The words hit like a jolt, her heart slamming against her ribs as she gripped the phone. "What is it? Is he—" Thomas hesitated, his voice steady but laced with caution over the line's static. "Not him, ma'am. But something connected. We're securing the area. Can you be here in an hour?" Laura's mind raced, questions tumbling out. "Is he hurt?" "Found." But Thomas cut in gently. "Just come. It's better in person." She hung up, the rain now a steady drum on her hood as she dashed back inside, texting Mia's school for an early pickup and Raj to meet her there. The drive on a 101 felt eternal, the highway's lanes slick with water, wipers swishing rhythmically as billboards for the latest AI conferences blurred past. What could it be? A body? A note? The possibilities clawed at her, turning the cab warm with dread sweat. By the time Laura pulled into the makeshift lot off Grand Boulevard, the scene was cordoned off with yellow tape fluttering like caution flags in the wind. The riverbank here was a forgotten stretch, overgrown with scrub brush and tangled reeds, backed by a row of derelict shipping containers graffitied in faded tags. Uniformed officers milled about, their breath visible as they directed traffic from a growing cluster of news vans, reporters huddling under umbrellas with cameras trained on the water's edge. Mia arrived minutes later in Raj's SUV, her face pale as she bolted from the passenger seat, Laura pulling her into a fierce hug. "Mom, what's happening? They said on the radio, something about Dad's stuff." Raj, his coat zipped to his chin, clapped a hand on Laura's shoulder, his usual bluster subdued. "P.I. Harlan tipped them off this morning. Some jogger found it during her run." Detective Ruiz met them at the tape, her parka zipped over her badge, boots caked in mud from the bank. Rain beaded on her hood as she led them down a gravel path, the air sharp with the scent of wet earth and decaying leaves. Early this morning, a local woman out running, Teresa Nguyen, lives in the apartments nearby, spotted something glinting on the ice along the bank. Ruiz explained, her voice low to cut through the murmur of the crowd. She thought it was trash at first, but it looked off. Called it in. Forensics is en route, but it's his glasses, Ethan's, the ones he wore every day, tortoiseshell frames, slight scratch on the left lens from that hike last summer. Laura's knees buckled slightly, Mia's hand flying to her mouth as they reached the overlook. There, under the gray sky, a cluster of officers stood around a cleared patch where the ice had been carefully chipped away. The glasses lay on a evidence tarp, frost-kissed but unmistakable, the thin metal arms bent at odd angles, as if they'd been dropped in haste or force. A tech from the crime lab snapped photos, the flash stark against the muted light, while another officer sketched the position, about 20 feet from the water's edge, half buried in a drift of frozen mud near a cluster of brittle oaks. No blood, no footprints preserved in the ice, just the glasses, alone and accusatory, staring up like forgotten eyes. "Oh God," Laura whispered, sinking to her haunches, the cold seeping through her jeans. Mia knelt beside her, tears freezing on her lashes. "Those are his, I remember. He adjusted them right before leaving that morning." Raj paced nearby, fists clenched, his voice rough as he questioned Ruiz. "How'd they get here? That's miles from the convention center. Did he walk? Drive?" Ruiz shook her head, rain dripping from her brow. "No vehicle tracks nearby. The jogger said the area's quiet this time of year. Mostly birdwatchers and the occasional homeless camp upstream. Forensics will check for prints, DNA on the frames. But it changes things. Suggests he made it this far at least. Or someone brought them." The implications crashed over them like the river's sluggish current. Had Ethan wandered here in a daze, drawn by that mumbled "the river" from the stage? A breakdown, perhaps, leading him to the water's edge before. What? Or worse, foul play. Someone staging this to throw off the trail. Reporters shouted questions from behind the tape. "Mrs. Caldwell, any suspects?" Theories on the glasses. But an officer waved them back, the chaos amplifying the family's shock. Laura touched the tarp's edge, her fingers hovering over the glasses, memories flooding. Ethan peering over them at dinner, laughing at Mia's jokes, cleaning them on his shirt during hikes, the sun catching the lenses. "He wouldn't just leave them," she said, voice breaking, turning to Ruiz. "This means he's close, right? Or was." As the lab tech bagged the evidence, sealing it with a zip that echoed too loudly, a new wave of urgency rippled through the group. Raj pulled out his phone, already dialing contacts. "I'll get private divers out here tomorrow, ice or no ice." Mia wiped her face, standing taller. "We need to search the whole bank again. He could be out there." Ruiz nodded, her expression grim under the drizzle. "This is a break, but it's not closure. We'll drag the river, pull satellite data for any anomalies. Stay by your phones." The family lingered as the scene wrapped, the officers packing gear into vans, the river murmuring indifferently below. Frost clung to the reeds, the cold deepening as afternoon shadows lengthened. But for the first time in weeks, the void felt pierced, a shocking thread pulling them back toward answers, even as it unraveled more fears. Laura drove home in silence, the glasses image burned into her mind, the wipers beating a somber rhythm against the unknown. Months had slipped by since the glasses turned up on that frozen riverbank, each one layering more questions onto the fragile scaffold of what little the Caldwells clung to. It was now late spring in Silicon Valley, the kind of season where the hills burst into wild mustard blooms under relentless sun, and the air hummed with the promise of innovation fairs and rooftop happy hours. But for Laura and Mia, the vibrancy felt distant, like a screensaver on a paused computer. Their home on the ridge still stood as a monument to the life interrupted, glass walls now often curtained against the glare, the deck where barbecues once sizzled, gathering a thin patina of dust on the furniture. Mornings started with the same ritual. Coffee brewing in the machine Ethan had picked out during a Black Friday sale, its gurgle a hollow echo of routines past. The investigation had evolved into a slow-burning file on Detective Ruiz's desk at the San Jose PD, buried under stacks of unsolved cases but never fully closed. Ruiz, her hair now streaked with more gray from the winter's toll, checked in monthly, her calls coming during Laura's lunch hours when the Sunnyvale office buzzed with takeout deliveries and impromptu stand-up meetings. "We've got the glasses processed," she'd say over the speakerphone, the faint clatter of her keyboard in the background like Morse code for dead ends. No fingerprints besides Ethan's own, smudges from daily wear. DNA traces match him and you, Laura, from handling them at home. No blood, no fibers pointing to struggle. The frames had been bent, yes, but forensics chalked it up to the freeze-thaw cycle, the metal warped by ice expansion in the mud. Could have been dropped casually, Ruiz added once, her voice carrying the weight of too many maybes. Or tossed. We're running simulations on how they ended up there. Wind patterns, river currents from that cold snap. What they knew for certain was slim, pieced together from camera stills and witness recollections that had grown fuzzier with time. Ethan had left the convention center at 12:03 p.m. that November day, captured on a grainy exterior feed striding toward Almaden Boulevard, his blazer flapping slightly in the breeze off the loading dock. No vehicle in his path, no one approaching him. Just the ordinary chaos of lunch-hour foot traffic, a food truck vendor flipping tacos, a group of conference-goers debating session recaps under striped umbrellas. The last ping from his phone placed him 2 blocks east, near a strip mall with a nail salon and a faux joint, the signal dropping at 12:47, as if he'd powered it down or submerged it. He mentioned the river backstage, Ruiz reminded Laura during one call, the detective's chair creaking as she leaned back. Guadalupe's the closest, about 4 miles north. Walkable in under an hour if he cut through back streets, past the light rail tracks and those warehouse lots. The private investigator Harlan had fleshed out a possible route in his reports, maps pinned to the fridge like a grim family calendar. He'd canvassed the area post-discovery, knocking on doors of Alviso's modest apartments, where laundry lines sagged under spring sun and kids kicked soccer balls on patchy lawns. Folks remember a guy matching Ethan's description wandering the trail that afternoon, Harlan told Raj over a video call one evening. His face weathered under the brim of a faded giant's cap, the Mission District's street noise filtering in, honking taxis, a distant mariachi band. Middle-aged, well-dressed, looking distracted. One old-timer at the bait shop said he asked about shortcuts to the water, paid cash for a bottle of water. No one saw him after the bend near the old rail yard. Harlan's leads dried up there, his invoice piling up as the trail went cold again. If he swam or fell in, the current could have carried him miles before the freeze locked things down, he speculated, but divers had pulled nothing from the depths, no clothes, no phone, no sign of Ethan. Financially, the picture was clean, almost too much so. Venture Forge's accountants combed through Ethan's accounts. No unusual transfers. No offshore shells or crypto wallets siphoning funds. His Tesla, finally towed home after weeks in the valet lot, sat in the garage like a relic, its odometer unchanged, keys still on the hook by the door. He was solid, Raj confirmed during a visit. The 2 men, now unlikely allies, sipping beers on the deck as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows over the valley's twinkling lights. Portfolio humming, no debts, no scandals. If he bolted voluntarily, he planned it like a ghost in the machine, left everything behind. But Ethan's character spoke against it. Colleagues shared stories of his loyalty, like the time he stayed up all night mentoring a founder's pitch, or how he'd quietly funded a co-worker's medical bills after a cancer scare. Ethan didn't run, Sarah Klein said firmly at a support group meetup Laura attended, the circle of chairs in the community center filled with other families nursing their losses, the air scented with chamomile tea from a communal pot. Something pulled him, or pushed him, toward that river. For the family, knowledge came laced with grief's sharp edges. Laura had taken a leave from work, her days now a blend of therapy sessions in a cozy Menlo Park office, soft lamps, box of tissues, and volunteering with missing persons groups, handing out flyers at farmers markets where stalls overflowed with heirloom tomatoes and artisan cheeses. We know he was thinking of us, she told Mia one quiet afternoon in the kitchen, sunlight streaming through the windows onto the island where they'd once prepped meals together. The girl, now 17 and taller, her features sharpening into a young woman's resolve, nodded as she stirred chamomile tea, the steam curling up like unanswered prayers. His last text to you, that heart, and the notes in his planner about my prom dress. Mia's voice held steady, but her eyes betrayed the nights she still woke from dreams of Ethan calling her name from the river's edge. The glasses themselves had become a talisman, returned to Laura in a plain evidence bag after testing. She kept them in his office drawer, occasionally slipping them on, the lenses too strong for her eyes, blurring the world into a hazy focus that mirrored her reality. "What do we really know?" she'd ask in group, the responses a chorus of shared uncertainty. Paths not taken, words left unsaid. The media had circled back sporadically, a podcast episode on tech titans who vanish, hosted by a podcaster with a velvet voice and dramatic pauses, replaying footage of the empty stage, but public interest waned, replaced by the next AI breakthrough splashed across headlines. Yet, fragments of progress emerged like code compiling in the background. A tip line sifted through calls, a blurry dashcam video from a lift near the river, time-stamped days after the speech, showing a figure in a hoodie that some swore was Ethan's build. Under review, inconclusive. Ethan's old emails, mined by the FBI's cyber team, revealed nothing sinister, just routine deals and family banter. One thread about river cleanup initiatives, Ruiz mentioned offhand. He donated to a Guadalupe restoration fund last year. Maybe that's why the river stuck in his head. It was a thread, thin but real, weaving environmental passion into the puzzle. As spring deepened, the family navigated what they knew with a tentative forward motion. Mia aced her AP exams, channeling Ethan's drive into college essays about resilience and uncertainty, her acceptance letter from Stanford arriving like a bittersweet echo. Laura planted a small garden on the deck, herbs and tomatoes in terracotta pots, tending them as the sun warmed the soil, a quiet act of reclaiming space. Raj and Sarah kept VentureForge's door open, a job waiting if answers came. But the core remained. Ethan Caldwell, mid-speech one moment, a mystery the next, his glasses the lone breadcrumb on a riverbank that thawed but yielded no more. What they knew today was enough to sustain hope, fragile as the valley's morning fog, but not enough to fill the silence that lingered in the house each night. As the sun climbed higher into the Silicon Valley sky that late spring afternoon, casting a golden haze over the blooming hills and the endless ribbon of Highway 101, Laura Caldwell stood on the deck of their ridgetop home, a half-empty mug of chamomile tea cooling in her hand. The air carried the sweet tang of wild mustard from the trails below, mingling with the faint, acrid scent of distant wildfires smoldering up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, a reminder that even in this engineered paradise, nature could turn unpredictable. Below, the valley sprawled like a living circuit board, tech campuses gleaming under solar panels, shuttles ferrying coders between campuses, and the Guadalupe River a silver thread winding through it all, innocent now in its thawed, babbling flow. But for Laura, that river was no longer just a waterway. It was a scar, a question mark etched into the landscape that refused to fade. It had been 6 months since Ethan's glasses surfaced on that frozen bank, 6 months of sifting through fragments that never quite formed a whole. The family had learned to live with the ambiguity, folding it into their days like a stubborn glitch in an otherwise stable program. Mia, now officially a senior with her Stanford acceptance framed on the mantel, threw herself into leadership roles at school, captaining the robotics club, where she'd pitch projects on ethical AI with a fire that echoed her father's old keynotes. "Dad would love this," she'd say during club meetings in the high school's stuffy computer lab, the whir of cooling fans underscoring her words as teammates nodded, their screens flickering with code. But at home, over dinner, simple affairs of takeout sushi unrolled on the kitchen island, she'd falter, her chopsticks pausing midair. "Mom, do you think he knew? About Stanford, I mean." That last text. He was proud, right? Laura would reach across the table, squeezing her daughter's hand, the quartz cool under their elbows. He was. Every step you take, he's there in it. Laura's own path had curved toward advocacy, her leave from the software firm extending into a part-time role consulting on missing persons tech, apps that used AI to cross-reference sightings, algorithms trained on patterns of the vanished. She'd spoken at a small conference in Mountain View last month, The room a modest auditorium with folding chairs and a projector humming softly. The audience a mix of families and law enforcement types nursing styrofoam coffees. "My husband didn't just disappear," she'd said, her voice steady despite the knot in her throat, the stage lights warm on her face. "He left a trail we can't ignore. The river, the glasses, the life he built here. We need better tools to follow those threads." Questions followed in the Q&A, voices tentative. "What if it's voluntary? How do you cope?" She'd paused, glancing at a photo of Ethan projected behind her, that confident smile from his LinkedIn headshot. "You cope by asking the questions that keep you going. Where did he go? Why that river? And what if he's still out there, waiting for us to find him?" Detective Ruiz had become a fixture in their lives, her updates evolving from weekly to seasonal, delivered over phone calls that Laura took on walks along the Los Trancos Trail. The eucalyptus groves there rustled overhead, their bark peeling in long strips like shed secrets, as Ruiz's voice crackled through the earpiece. "The case is active, Laura. Downgraded, but open. We've got a new lead on that dash cam footage. The hoodie figure? Facial rec came back inconclusive, but the gait matches Ethan's from conference cams. Could be him heading north, toward the bay." Ruiz's tone held that practiced empathy, honed from years in the department's dimly lit bullpen, where fluorescent buzz and ringing phones formed the soundtrack to unresolved files. "And the river drags? Nothing new, but with the thaw, we're monitoring currents. If he went in..." She trailed off, the unspoken weight hanging like the trail's morning mist. Laura would stop at a viewpoint, the valley unfolding below in its tech-fueled bustle, and press. "Any theories on the glasses? Was it a message?" Ruiz sighed, the sound of papers shuffling. "Could be accidental, panic, disorientation, or deliberate. We're consulting a profiler. VCs like Ethan face high stress, but his profile screams stability, not flight." The broader world had moved on, as it does in a place where disruption is currency. Venture Forge thrived without him. Raj Patel name-dropped Ethan's visionary bets in pitch decks during sunny afternoons on Sand Hill Road, where deal memos fluttered like deal cards in the breeze off the bay. "Ethan's legacy is in the winds," Raj told Laura during a rare lunch at a Palo Alto cafe, the patio alive with the clatter of silverware and baristas calling orders. Lattes with oat milk, extra foam. His eyes, shadowed by the awning, met hers over sandwiches. "But we all feel the hole. Board meetings drag without his gut calls." Sarah Klein had started a scholarship in his name for women in climate tech, announced at a gala in San Francisco's glittering Moscone Center. Chandeliers twinkling over gowns and tuxes as she toasted. "To Ethan Caldwell, who saw the future and invested in it. May we find him to share the successes." The applause had been polite, the champagne flutes clinking like fragile hopes. But Laura, in the audience with Mia, felt the hollowness beneath the glamour. Yet questions lingered like unresolved code, branching into infinities that kept sleep at bay. Why the river? That mumbled word backstage, delirium from a stroke or a deliberate clue tied to his donations, perhaps a walk to clear his head that spiraled into something darker. Had burnout caught up, the relentless VC grind fracturing a mind that seemed unbreakable, leading him to shed his glasses like a skin and vanish into anonymity? Or foul play, a rival sabotaging a deal, staging the exit to cover tracks? The glasses, bent but bloodless, mocked them, dropped in flight, planted as misdirection, or simply lost in a moment of madness. No enemies surfaced in the emails or calls. Ethan's world was one of handshakes and high fives, not vendettas. And the family? Did he think of them in those first lost hours, wandering the warehouse lots with their concrete stoops and chain-link shadows? In quiet moments, like evenings when the house settled with the soft hum of the fridge and the distant whoosh of traffic, Laura and Mia would sit on the couch, a photo album open on their laps, snapshots of hikes, barbecues, Ethan's arm around them at Mia's science fair. What if he's changed his name, starting over somewhere quiet? Mia pondered once, her voice soft against the throw pillows, the room lit by a single lamp casting warm pools on the hardwood. Laura traced a picture of Ethan adjusting his glasses, the sun catching the lenses. Then we'd find him. But I wonder, did something break that day on stage? A realization we missed? The questions wove through their grief, not answers but anchors, pulling them forward even as they tugged at old wounds. Today, as Laura set her mug down and stepped inside, the glass door whispering shut behind her, she felt the weight of it all, the mystery not solved, but lived. Ethan's disappearance had reshaped them, forging resilience from the rubble of routine. Mia bounded down the stairs, backpack slung over one shoulder for a club meeting, her smile tentative but real. "Walk me out, the bus is early." They stepped into the driveway together, the sun warming the pavement, the valley alive below. No final revelation waited, just the open road of what-ifs. Is he safe, watching from afar, or lost forever in the river's depths? The questions remained, unanswered echoes in the innovation hum, inviting the world to wonder with them. What fragile threads hold our lives together, and what happens when one snaps?